hip hop, hip hop,
Yeah,
hip hop, hip
bars is back.
hip hop,
Sam
hip
Ant,
hop,
oh
hip
God,
hop,
what's
hip
up with you?
hop.
I done watched them niggas do interview after interview. They not culture vultures, the culture something they been into. So if you never gave them a view, I recommend you do. Cause when they question guests, they message is not subliminal. It don't matter if you
I gotta ask you, man. A black man in Hollywood. You talked about how you got started. Can you take us back to your journey and some of the things that you dealt with? You know, just being a black man in Hollywood, if you may.
So, when I first went, I was a kid. I started off as a writer. My first job was an advertising agency. I started an advertising agency when I was 18, 19 years old, and I started making commercials, local, regional commercials in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. I'm a Southern boy, so that's where I started. And, Hollywood was a real education in a lot of different ways, man, because I came from, my father coached at South Carolina State, I grew up running around on Florida A&M campus, so I was around black colleges and black college professors. They were part of my life. I got to Hollywood, and there were people wearing kufis and people who were, apologize, and people who were wearing Support Black College T-shirts. But they went to USC. And then when I walked into the room, I encountered executives that were scared of me. And would keep the door open. And then when I could talk to them and converse about things on their level, then suddenly the door would close and they would be comfortable and we would get to discussing business. So it was clear that, they were, quote, liberal, but the most liberal bigots you'd ever come across. Now, they didn't know that they were bigoted, but they were. And in many cases, they weren't trying to shoot at me or trying to hold me down, but by the same token, they weren't trying to give me the lead roles either. They were trying to give me that role that they had already pre-regulated for the black man on the side, the friend, no love interest, nothing like that, not on the poster, but somebody they want to go talk to the black community, go sell the show. So, I quickly realized that was the game. I quickly realized that all my skin folk wasn't kinfolk. And I quickly realized that there were plenty of white folk who were legit allies and plenty of white folk that weren't. I think the most surprising thing was I was writing on a show called The Different World. Mm-hmm. And when I first got the job, there was a writer on the show and a white Jewish guy from Brooklyn. Grew up, black people, Latinos, cool as hell, took me under his wing and really started grooming me and teaching me as a writer. He was the only man on the writing staff, and the writing staff was white women and also black women. And Halle Berry came in for an audition to be Darryl Bell's girlfriend on the show. And when she finished the audition, he was like, "She's amazing. She's beautiful. Oh my, that's her. That's the girl." And then the discussion that ensued in the room was about, was she black enough? And the person advocating for her was the white Jewish boy from Brooklyn, who had grown up in the culture. And the people who were women of color and white women who hadn't really necessarily grown up in the culture some had were discussing, was she black enough? So he went to Kadeem and Darryl Bell and told them what was going on, and then they got involved, and that's how Halle got that job. And that's when I realized, oh, wow, I can't say that these black women are racist, but I can certainly say that there's a system there, and there was a behavior there that they were a part of, and they were addressing things that they knew that they were going to have to deal with. But just because they were female and just because they were black didn't give Halle a single leg up to get that job. And that was, for me, that was super eye-opening because I believe just the opposite of that. So when I hear about, diversity and this, that, and the other thing, I go, but if you don't change the system, what does that matter at the end of the day? At the end of the day, it's more complicated than we make it. It's more complicated than race. And it's about a system that has been put in place. And that system is designed to keep us where we are. It's not designed to uplift us, and it never has been designed for that. So we're still pointing at the exception and not the rule.
When you go out for roles, or when you pick out roles, are you mindful of what this role, what this image may portray to not only myself, my family, but my community? Every time you pick a role, are you mindful of that?
I'm mindful that that my community is more diverse than people think it is, and I'm mindful that what somebody else might think is a stereotype is a living, breathing human being, and just because he don't sound the way you think smart people are supposed to sound doesn't mean he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Because those are the people in my family. So a lot of times I don't necessarily see them as stereotypes because I'm like, I'm not going to play him like that. So I'm mindful that it's not about being all doctors and lawyers. I'm mindful that you got to be just as brilliant to be a drug dealer, whether people want to hear that or not, because you have to operate outside of the system and you don't have the law on your side if somebody's stealing from you, but you still got to make product, distribute product, bring the money. You still have all of the things to do that a CEO does, but that young person, that older person didn't have the opportunity that this other person did. So am I going to diminish him because of this? Because the CEO of this company that's legal ain't paying my mama and your mama what he's paying this white lady. He or she isn't giving equal pay. He or she is still using the system in a way that is beneficial to him or her. So which one is the demon? I don't, it's hard for me to buy into what the system tells me black people are when I know that's not the truth. So I kind of look at all those roles that I approach that way. I don't have a problem with paying a drug dealer. I just don't want to play a damn fool, because that's not what a drug dealer is. And so I just try and bring some realness to it, some life to it. And a lot of times I want the character to sound inarticulate while at the same time being smarter than you, because I feel like that's the character we don't get to see. That's the one that's more interesting, the one that's more exciting. So those things certainly cross my mind, but I don't think I look at it the way my grandparents might look at it, right? You know, just because the person got this title, then they ain't nobody. You know, I remember when hip hop was just a fad to everybody, and before it dominated and took over the entire entertainment industry and the touring business, because the profits were much higher than having to tour with the band, right? I remember those things. I remember when it was just a fad, but I also remember that Kool Herc and them couldn't get in the Studio 54, and it was down in the Bronx at the park doing them parties, making their money because they didn't have the opportunities, and nor were they allowed access to some of the same things. And we forget that that was entrepreneurship. It wasn't framed as entrepreneurship. We forget that the graffiti wall behind you was because those artists didn't have canvases to paint on. And so they made canvases where canvases didn't exist. They put their art on display, and their art was inspirational to people like me. So I simply don't see those people the same way. So I ain't going to put them in the same box. And I'm not going to take a narrative that only sees me as a victim and tries to tell me who the people I grew up with are. That's funny to me. So I think about all those things, and I think about how I can bring the character to life in a way that, you know, people look at it and go, I don't know if I thought of it that way. And I do that as much as I can, whether it's on the page or not, or whether I got to write it myself or not. I think it's important, and I think it's hard to pass up those opportunities because I'm blessed to get them, because most people don't even get the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
Very well said. With that being said, though, I want to ask you about, are there any roles that you refused in Hollywood? You say, you know what? I can't do that.
I've turned down quite a few. Yeah. You know, for different reasons. I think a lot of times, to me, it's about, a lot of times you get offered a role and they tell you it's a pivotal role in the story. And in my case, pretty early on, I was more famous than the people in the lead roles, but I wasn't going to be on the poster. But when it came to selling the show, I was the one that was going to get booked on the morning show or the late night show or a show like your show, because you didn't know who the other person was. And I had to ask myself, why am I out selling the show, but I'm not on the poster? And if the show succeeds, they ain't going to say it succeeded on me. They're going to give that credit to them. So even though my agents and managers were like, go take this job, go do that, I was like, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not going to get credited with the win. I get penalized with the failure, and I'm gonna get treated like a second-class citizen because I'm, quote, not the star of the show. So what's the upside for me here? The money, certainly, I guess, but there's the right job for the right reason, the wrong job for the wrong reason, and money ain't always the right reason. So, you know, I had to do that a number of times. I'm sure I pissed people off. I wasn't trying to piss people off. I was just trying to be mindful that what I was being asked to do and the compensation that I was going to receive for doing that wasn't in keeping with what the ask was. And if they had talked to me honestly and been real about that, then maybe I would have felt more comfortable. But when you're talking to me like I'm a fool, telling me something that I know ain't true, then it's hard for me to go, yeah, this is going to be a great experience. Let me go do that. So there are, you know, things like that where I passed. And there were also times when I thought, you know what, this is the right grouping of people. This isn't about the money, but it is an opportunity to work with people who've been in the business for a long time. I want to learn from them. I'm going to go do that. So I try and not make those decisions based on race or any of those sorts of things. I just try and make those decisions as smartly as I can based on the people that I'm going to have to work with. And hopefully those people treat me with respect and I treat them with respect, and hopefully we do great work. And I just kind of look at it like that.